Good day, dear students. Today we are starting yet another poem. Earlier we have seen what a sonnet is, and we also had a long poem, and now we are having yet another poem. It is by a Victorian poet, and his name is Robert Browning. The name of the poem is My Last Duchess. My Last Duchess is the name of the poem, and it is about the former Duchess of a Duke. And Robert Browning, being a Victorian poet, had been to Europe, and he had collected a lot of cultural material and had imbibed the art and culture of Europe of the Victorian times. So when he returned to England, traces of that culture still lingered with him. And it is out of that he fashioned dramatic monologue. Earlier, you must have listened to my talk on Victorian poets and also about the monologue or dramatic monologue, which Tennyson had started and perfected now by Robert Browning. What is a dramatic monologue? And why do you call this poem a dramatic monologue? Monologue means by a single speaker or speech by a single person. Dramatic monologue means you have drama and you are acting out for the sake of others, or you have a lot of emotions put in, and you also remark the actions or even the facial change or expression of the audience also. So, in a way, dramatic monologue is actually a drama, kind of a drama, but at the same time, the speaker is a single person. But there will be more than one listener, sometimes one listener, but sometimes more than one listener. This is how it is fashioned. Moreover, it is a poem. And this is why Robert Browning was able to put in a lot of drama into the monologue or in his poems, and for that he created the people or the characters from the European world. And the present one is the Duke of Ferrara, and it is about this Duke of Ferrara and his last Duchess that he speaks of in this dramatic monologue, My Last Duchess. So, as I told you earlier, it is by a single speaker and it starts at a critical moment. It is not the beginning of something and the ending of something, nothing. In the middle of something, it begins. And it is also a crucial time or a critical moment in the speaker's life. And this is how, from that point on, the dramatic monologue begins. You'll find, for example, there is the poem called the Fra Lippo, and the poem begins when Fra Lippo was caught by the night patrolling watchman, policeman, and it is from that point the poem starts. It is a critical moment. He had been running, and the police or the night watchmen were running after him, and finally they caught him, and they were surprised to find that it is a friar. And it is from there the dramatic monologue begins. Here, you find that Browning had chosen a critical moment in the speaker's life. The speaker here is the Duke of Ferrara. So he perfected this poetic form by writing not just one dramatic monologue but several. So you find that each time he writes one, he perfects that, and the next one will be much better than the present one. So in this manner, he was able to get the attention of the reading public of the Victorian England. So when he perfected this poetic form, you will find that among these his dramatic monologues, the one that stands out is the poem My Last Duchess. So, as I told you, the speaker of the poem is the Duke of Ferrara. And what is the occasion? As I told you earlier, dramatic monologue begins at a critical point in the speaker's life. So, this occasion is he is negotiating his second marriage with the neighboring duke's daughter. and the neighboring duke had sent a messenger, an emissary, means a messenger, and he had come to this duke, Duke of Ferrara, with this proposal, and the duke was quite happy about it because he was also thinking on his lines, and this proposal is indeed a happy occasion for him. And to this emissary, instead of directly concluding that transaction, he is telling this emissary about his former wife. And why is he telling the messenger about his former wife? They all know that his former wife is dead, and maybe they knew something about his former wife. But more than that, what the public knew, the Duke wants to emphasize certain points about his wife to the emissary so that he will take that message to the neighboring Duke and to his daughter. That is the girl who is going to be the next Duchess or his next wife. So, with that purpose in mind, he is now taking the emissary up the steps to the top of the stairs, to the upstairs, where on the wall he had placed the portrait, and the portrait is at a prominent place. And naturally, it is a beautiful portrait, beautiful in the sense that it was the the theme of the portrait, that is the Duchess, was really beautiful, and the artist had captured that beauty in canvas, and so it is really lifelike and also very attractive. So when he takes this neighboring duke's emissary up the stairs to see this portrait, which is placed at a prominent place on the wall, the poem begins. So before the portrait of his former wife, the Duke is standing with the with this man, that is the emissary, that is the messenger from the neighboring Duke. The poem starts from here, and I have told you that the poem begins at a critical point in the life of the speaker. So always keep that in mind as we progress through the poem, because we get to know why this crisis, okay, why it is a critical point. Let's see the lines. The first few lines, that is, that's my last Duchess, and it ends a few lines. Are you to turn and ask thus? So here you find that showing this picture of his last Duchess, the Duke is asking the messenger to look at this picture. That's my last Duchess, he says. And when you speak of this Duke, that's my last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I called that a piece of wonder. Now Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. And here, will it please you to sit and look at her? I said. Fra Pandolf, I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus. So we'll take the lines from the beginning till here, and this these lines are very significant because he draws the curtain before the painting. The painting is not exposed to everyone's eye, it is concealed from the approaching persons by this curtain, and only the Duke alone will draw the curtain before the painting. No other person is allowed to draw the curtain, and he reveals the painting of his last Duchess, and he says that a piece of, I call that a piece of wonder now. It's a piece of wonder. It's really beautiful. Even the Duke was really impressed by the painting of his wife. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Busily, he worked busily a day, And within no time at all, he was able to complete it. And there she stands, means the painting. Will it please you to sit? Please you sit and look at her. Don't stand there. You just sit there and look at this painting. Uh, I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance. Countenance means face, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned. So the term Fra Pandolf is mentioned by design by the Duke because Fra means friar, means priest. In those days in Europe, the priests or the monks were assigned to do the painting. They were good artists also. Even though they are monks, they were also good artists. They used to paint their walls and also the walls of the churches, and they were commissioned by the duke or the ruling people, the nobility, to paint the pictures of their household members. And here this duke has got a certain intention in mentioning the name Fra Pandolf because uh, you will find that the person or there must have been an expression on the face of the emissary, and he says that uh, this earnest glance that you find uh, on the face of this duchess, and the depth and passion of the duchess that you find there is not directed to any friar but only to the duke. So do not think that the artist fell in love with the subject. Don't ever think that because she is my wife and she can't turn a glance like that to any other person except me. And so I have commissioned a friar to draw the picture of my beautiful duchess. So, this glance and the depth of passion that you find portrayed on the face of the Duchess is directed to him, to me, and not to a friar or not to the painter. So, do not mistake. That is again a warning to the messenger. The Duke reveals his character very slowly through this monologue. So when a person says that, do not mistake that this glance is directed at the painter, then the listener will be doubtful. Why is this man talking about this? The Duchess is already dead, so why should he still harp on something that is already gone by? And so he wants to correct this messenger that he is to take all this message to his master and his daughter. Okay, so that is the warning that is given there. So he reveals his character very slowly through this monologue. And again, when you take the next few lines, you will find, so it was not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess's cheek. So perhaps Frapp had of chance to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half blush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. So here you find that it was not just her husband's presence that brought in that spot of joy into the Duchess's cheek. The cheek, the faint blush color on the cheek of the Duchess is caused not by the presence of the Duke alone. Maybe Fra Pandolf must have chanced to say, oh, oh, my lady, your mantle laps over your lady's wrist too much. Just put it just back. And maybe she must have blushed at that. Or maybe he must have said, paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half blush that dies along her throat. Maybe that is her natural beauty, the faint blush that is there on her face. All these are indicative of the fact that she is quite an innocent and she just do not know how to behave towards the other people, especially to a person who is intent on giving her a lot or paying her a lot of compliments. And the Duke says that the reasons for the blush on her cheek, it must have been a comment by Frappador, which must have been quite harmless, and maybe they are just courtesy remark. After all, she is the wife of a duke, and so you can't just keep quiet and start painting like that. You have to pay her a compliment, which is actually the one thing that the painters do to put their subject at ease. So maybe the friar must have given such a compliment. So the Duke is saying that it is not just the presence of the of her husband that brought in that spot of joy or the color on the cheek of the Duchess, but it must have been some compliment by this friar, and this must have really affected her. So here, that is it was in a way something of a contradiction. The Duke is someone who wants the wife to have reason to talk or even to blush only at her, at him, and not at any other person. So how can he be that have exclusiveness when she is a duchess? She has so many other people to meet, and she need not exhibit so much of joy or show that blush on her face. That should not be. She should be very cool and collected. That's how the Duke expects her to behave, and she should be condescending towards the other people who are lesser than her, and this lady was not like that. She was that impulsive. She was given to a lot of emotions, and she reacts to people and gives a lot of joy by her presence to a lot of people by being there and by thanking them for the little gifts that they give. And she is quite happy with that, quite happy with the little things. And the Duke just do not like that. So you find in these lines the way the Duke had assessed the Duchess and how she had reacted to that, and you find here that the Duke is speaking of his Duchess with a lot of love, maybe, but a lot of possessiveness. Rather than love, just a lot of possessiveness. He had really assessed her rightly, and he says that she had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. So it was all one. My favor at her breast, the drooping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, and the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech or blush at least. So the Duke had clearly assessed her, and he says she had a heart. How shall I say? The Duke just did not know how to put it in the proper manner. Too soon made glad, too easily impressed. These are his words. And she liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. She took a lot of pleasure in the things around her. In a way, she was a happy person, and maybe it is that happiness that is there on her face that made him feel gloomy about it. She should be happy only in his presence. Maybe he demanded that. But this lady was totally different. She, sir, it was all one in the sense that she looked everywhere, her looks went everywhere. My favor at her breast means she was endowed with the name of the Duke, and now she is a Duchess. So actually, she should be a little bit more dignified than a real ordinary person. And she's happy when she finds the sunset, the dropping of the daylight in the west. It's a beautiful sight from where she is standing, and from the garrets or from the fortress of the palace. She could really view it well, and she was happy about that. And the bough of cherries, some officious fool broke in the orchard for her. Maybe someone had brought in a bunch of berries for her, cherries for her, and the white mule she rode round the terrace. And she was very happy with the white mule also. And the bunch of cherries that was brought to her by some person who was working in the orchard. She thanked them, and had a blush for them. And the giver was really thanked, rewarded by that, and they really enjoyed giving her things to make her happy. The Duke had really assessed her rightly. She had a heart made glad by little things, and he mentions some of those things: the setting sun, the bunch of cherries, the white mule that she rode around the terrace. All these gave her a lot of happiness, a lot of pleasure. All these and more she proved and made her blush with happiness, or made her blush with happiness. So here you find that she is quite easily pleased with the things and also with people, and she is quite a happy person. So in a way, you get to know this Duchess through the words of the Duke himself. No other way we could know about her. So he had clearly drawn a beautiful portrait, word portrait of his last Duchess, and we are enjoying her life and also her character, beauty, everything. So the Duke has got a way of describing his own wife properly. So here you find that this is indeed something that you will have to keep in mind. He had assessed her correctly. She is happy. She is happy with her life. She is happy with the little things. She is happy with the 400-year-old name of the Duke, and she is also happy with the bunch of cherries that some person must have given her from the orchard. She is also happy with the little white mule that she rode around the terrace, and she has a happy disposition towards other people. So we know that she is beautiful because it's a beautiful portrait, and the emissary of the neighboring duke was really struck by the beauty of this portrait. And the duke invites him to sit and view the portrait because he doesn't want the emissary to rush off. He has got a lot to say about this portrait, and very slowly the Duke's character and the Duchess character all are revealed through the words of the Duke and through the reaction of the audience, that is the emissary. Because he looks at the Duke at that one point and he says, "No, sir, it is not just my presence that brought in that blush. It is something more. A lot of things. Maybe Fra Pandolf must have given her a comment, and that comment must have made her blush, and he must have said that this mantle just overlaps her lap, so you should put it a little bit back, and only then the portrait will come out well." And that must have made her feel happy, or she is reacting to that, and that blush is there on her face and on her cheek also. It is not just done for the sake of beautifying a picture. It's an oil painting, so you know how much of change you can make with that. And it usually the painters from Europe, they had a great lot of skill. And here the Duke emphasizes one point, and the point is that the painter is none other than Fra Pandolf. It is, don't think that the painter had a relationship with the Duchess or the Duchess was in love with the painter. Nothing doing. Don't ever have that mistake in your mind. That's a warning to the emissary. And so, in that manner, the Duke continues with the portrait and the description of his former wife and her portrait and the painting and her character. From the painting, he moves on to the character of his lady. And from there, while he is doing that, he is revealing his own character. So, in a way, Browning is using this dramatic monologue as a place for self assessment and also for the readers to assess the character of the person, that is the speaker, and also about whom he is speaking. So we get to know a beautiful word picture of the last Duchess and also her nature. And this is exactly what Browning had successfully done through this monologue. That's why I said earlier that it's a perfect example of the dramatic monologues of Browning, one of the best dramatic monologues of Browning. And he had perfected that art of using words to reveal the character of one person and also to reveal the character of another person through his words. So it is in a way two characters being revealed through this one monologue, and the poet had put in a lot of material in order to make it really impressive. Each word is chosen, and he had used some run-on lines also, because the thought process just do not end with the ending of one single line. It continues with the next line also. So that means that it is indeed and like one person talking to you, and you will find that person describing and that things and also people, and you naturally have your face expressing your feelings, and that is also considered by the speaker. He gives answer to that when the emissary questions and looks at him with a question, and he can assess understand what that question is, and naturally he gives an answer to that question. So the dramatic monologue progress in such a manner that you are taken from one point to a lot of other points. From downstairs, the emissary was taken up the stairs so that he can see the the portrait that is there on the wall, and very dramatically he unveils the portrait by removing the curtain. He also tells the emissary that only he alone has got the right to remove that curtain from before the portrait of his wife. No other person, no other servant, no one is allowed to remove that curtain. So, removing the curtain and putting it back is the duty of the Duke. So he shows, we feel that he has such a concern for the Duchess who is already dead. That's what we all think. The emissary was also made to think that he had so much of concern for his wife, and he is proud of his beautiful wife who is already dead and gone. And he also gives a very matter of fact attitude or a description of his former wife, and even from there also you slowly get an inkling or an idea as to how he had really wanted to be, or how he really wanted his wife to behave towards him, or what he expected from his wife. All these are there in the words, quite hidden, but at the same time in a way, in a very subtle manner, he speaks about his duchess. It is also to be a warning to the emissary so that he can take these facts to his master and reveal those to the master's daughter, whom he is going to marry soon. So, in a way, this is paving the way for a lot of things in the sense that it is also something that he is taking for granted, and at the same time, he is in a subtle manner giving his opinion or his attitude toward to the women and also to the wife to be as to what he expects from a wife. And so this wife's story is revealed, and her character is also revealed through his words, and he finds these characters, he finds them wanting. She shouldn't be so simple. She is so simple minded. She is made so easily happy. These are not the ways in which a duchess should behave, and that is something that he finds lacking in this in his former duchess. So, in a way, dear students, this is the way in which the poet very skillfully puts in two portraits here. One that of the portrait of my last duchess, the other that of the duke himself through the word picture, through the words that he uses, the way he assesses his wife, and the words he uses and makes the emissary listen to this and that. All these really makes us understand the Duke very well. And through the words of the Duke, we understand what a good wife, what type of a wife he had earlier, and we are not feeling sympathy for the duke. We are our sympathies change towards the wife later, not now but later. We are only halfway through the poem, and the rest of the poem will be in the next class. So, dear students, read what is there in the text, the poem. Also, read the former pages, the pages that come earlier, that is pages 52 and 53, and also the first half of 54. that will be an introduction to Robert Browning, a very good introduction to Robert Browning and also to dramatic monologue and especially to my last, that is the poem. So go through that and also to through the questions that are given in the next few pages. Okay, thank you. Good night.